Okay, so the first thing is, here is my contact information. Here's my phone number. And I will just say right up front, I'm impossible to get on the phone. And the reason being is because I'm on the phone all day with insurance companies, which is really not fun. And if I get on the phone with an insurance company, I don't want to get off because it takes a while to get through. So email me. If you email me, I'm always at my computer generally or on my phone, and I can get back with you right away and set up a time for us to have a consultation. Also, I have 3 other staff members in my office that can get a message to if you call. But if you call me, odds are you're not going to be able to talk to me, but we'll have to set up an appointment. So the first thing is, most important, I want to help educate you on what you have. I'm assuming that some of you have CalPERS. If you're through the Retirement Association, most people purchased CalPERS, and that's a whole nother animal. CalPERS is not an insurance company, it's a fund, it's a private fund, but everything about CalPERS is the same that I'm going to be talking about with regard to long-term care insurance. I want to educate you to help you understand how you could learn what your benefits are, what you have, and then I want to explain to you why advocacy for this type of insurance is really, really important. And then the next thing, I do want to explain what navigating a claim is. A lot of times when I do these presentations, inevitably, I'll get somebody who will contact me after and they'll say, I'm going to drop my policy. I just got a 300% rate increase, right? And I'll say, tell me a little bit about what's going on with you. And then come to find out, they actually should be filing a claim. And so I want you to listen very carefully about when I talk about what it takes to file a claim, right? Because most people think that you've got to be bedridden or on hospice or something so severe before you file, and that is not true. So anyway, our services are designed to protect and support our clients' dignity while supporting their claim. Why is dignity important to me? I just find that this season of life for people is really hard sometimes to get folks to pay attention to them. It's hard to navigate the healthcare system. And so we want to put our clients and their needs front and center, get them what they need, and then make sure that the insurance company is paying attention to them. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is, and I need to move around my little head because I don't want to watch myself, educate. All right, so in your policies, you have your policy. I hope you have your policy. If you do not have your policy, you need to call your insurance company and order a duplicate policy. You might get a scheduled page in the mail every year. That is not a policy, that's a schedule page. The reason why you need a policy is because the guts and the contract language are the most important thing. So you get your policy out, and it's usually a trifold or it's thick. And you want to understand basically 4 things. 4 things you want to know. Number 1, what are my benefit limits? How much is this thing going to pay for me? Most of you have a daily or a monthly benefit. So for example, back in the day when you bought your policies, you probably purchased maybe $100 or $120 a day, but you probably have an inflation rider. If you have CalPERS or if you have the California partnership policy, you have a 5% compounded inflation rider. That means that your benefits doubled in 15 years, and they may have tripled depending on how long you've had that policy. So whatever your daily benefit is, that means that's your budget. And so when we help people with their claim and their benefits, we tell them, okay, you have this much money. Let's pretend you're entitled to have $300 a day for care. We can help you calculate out home care is $45 an hour, $47 or $52 an hour. This is how many hours you can have per day. This is what your policy will pay. Or this is how much your policy will pay in an assisted living, dementia care, or skilled nursing facility. And so that's the most important thing to know, because you want to be able to budget. How much is my policy going to pay? Because you're going to want to know what that delta is if you have out of pocket. The second thing is, how long is this policy going to pay? And this is an area of confusion for people because your policies have a maximum. Most policies have a dollar maximum. And so, for example, your original policy may have said, we will pay you $3,000 a month for $109,000 maximum. And again, that's probably quite a bit higher now as the inflation has grown it. But what that means is that maximum is a dollar amount. It's like a piggy bank. And when you start using that money and pulling a little bit of money out, that piggy bank or that savings account goes down in increments. The reason I say that this is confusing for people is because when you bought your policy, you had to select a year, like a 4-year or a 5-year or a 6-year, or maybe you have one of those great policies that's unlimited. If you have a 3 or a 4-year policy, when you file a claim, it does not start a clock or a calendar per se. And a lot of times people say, gosh, I don't want to start a claim because I do need care, but what if I need care longer? And now that the clock is ticking, I don't want this to run out. That's not how it works. How it works is whatever amount you pull out of your savings account, your piggy bank, however you want to term it, is how that maximum is going to go down. So for example, if you originally bought a 3-year policy, but you're only using a small portion, and you're only going to use a small portion every month for home care, your benefits could last 6 years or something like that. But it's important to know, how long is this thing going to last? Why is that important? Well, we have clients, for example, that have Parkinson's disease or have been diagnosed with a neurocognitive disorder. And they just want to save their money because they're concerned that if they start using it, then they'll run out. And we always tell people, if you're eligible for benefits, you should file and just start slowly using your benefits. And there's reasons why, and I'll explain in just a moment. So 4 things: benefit amounts, how much per day you're going to get paid, how long it's going to pay for your care. And then the next thing is the deductible period. It's like all policies, insurance policies have deductibles. And deductibles with long-term care insurance is measured in days or service visits. And I will share my contact information with you really quick. Let me get this before I forget. So for example, if you have a 90-day deductible, that means in general that you have to have 90 days of care. And so think about that. If your policy says you have to have 90 actual days of care, family members don't count. And let's say you only have someone coming into your home 3 days a week. Can you imagine how long that will take to calculate and to accumulate 90 days? So it's important for you to know in your policy, well, how does that deductible work? Some policies are calendar days. So what that means, like CalPERS, if you have CalPERS, that means that it's just a 90 calendar day. So if you're receiving services, you don't have to have service days. You can have anybody help you. It just means 90 days rolling forward, your benefits will pay. That's much easier. So when we look at people's policies, we explain to them that difference, and that helps them because, again, it's a budget issue. How soon are my benefits going to start? That's what people want to know. And so whatever deductible you have, think in your mind, that's how much out of pocket. That's the time frame you're going to have to wait to get your benefits. And then the last thing, and I've already talked about this a little bit, is an inflation rider. A lot of times these policies don't send you annual statements to say, this year your benefits are X, Y, and Z. And so you'll pull out your policy and you'll think, I only have $100 a day. And that's not true. You probably have $300 a day because you have an inflation rider. Now, here's what I'm going to say is very important. And I've run into this frequently recently, and it's to me, it's just heartbreaking. When people get rate increases, they usually get these letters that say, here's your rate increase, and here are some options for you. If you don't want to pay the rate increase, you can do a paid up policy and we'll just call it a day, and you don't have to pay any more premiums. And that sounds like a great deal, doesn't it? It's not a great deal. What that means is the insurance company shrinks down your policy benefits to the amount that you paid in over the years. I'll give you an example. I have a client who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2017, and she's just now starting to need care. So the family retained us, and she had a policy that had 6 years coverage, $216,000 in a benefit pool. And we called the insurance company to verify, which we always do. And the insurance company said, oh, wait a minute. I think there was a change that was made in 2017, right around the time she was diagnosed. And what had happened is the family did not want to pay the rate increase, and they decided to take that paid out option. And her benefits were worth $6,000, period. That was it. So now this lady thought she had a 6-year benefit, and she only had $6,000 to work with. And she didn't really realize what she had signed. She didn't get any guidance. She just thought it sounded really good. And I'm telling you, if you get a letter based on rate increases, and usually these letters are 5 to 10 pages long, it's very confusing to read. If you get a letter from your insurance company and it sounds good, get some advice before you take the option. So the next one, let's see here. Hold on one moment. 835, there we go. Sorry about that. Hard for me to text and talk at the same time. Okay, so advocacy. Why do you need an advocate? I'm believing more and more just with our healthcare industry. It's very complex. Advocates are very important, and usually family members can be wonderful advocates, meaning that somebody should be along the journey with you. I think I had shared this multiple times that we recently had moved my mom and dad in with my husband and I while we were building a little cottage for them on our property. And they just recently moved into their little house in October because it's complete. And I had shared multiple times in other presentations I've given that I feel like I know a little bit about parent care. And I've learned so much having my parents live with me, just about attitudes and privacies and sensitivities about sharing information. What I think is important, what I think should be advocated for, maybe my parents think I should butt out. And so there's a lot of that with families. But what I would say is you should have someone along with you on the journey. That's all. And the reason being is because in the event that something happened that you could not communicate for yourself, I know that sounds terrible and really scary, but it's just the fact of life. We live in bodies that are not going to last for forever. And so with this in our bodies, have somebody along the journey with you who can talk to your healthcare professionals. Why do we need an advocate for long-term care insurance? So when I sold these policies, I used to think, because I would read the contract language, and I used to think years and years ago. So I was 22, 23 when I first started selling insurance. And I thought, these are pretty complicated contracts. What will I be like when I'm 80, 85? Well, I understand this. Now, I have a long-term care insurance policy, and I'm speaking of myself. In general, the guts of the contract and why long-term care claims go south for people in general, it's because of consumers. And I'm not a fan of insurance companies by and large. Like most of us are, we have a love-hate relationship with them. But I will tell you that as a consumer, if you really understand what you have and you know your rights within the context of that policy, you will have an excellent experience with your claim. The problem is that most people really don't like reading contract language. They find it boring, confusing, like I do with other insurances, but this I understand forwards and backwards. And I can tell you that the language in these contracts is different. So for example, who can provide care for you? A lot of times what will happen is we'll get claims for people that did not go well. And it's because they've hired somebody that is not a home care agency. And oftentimes your policy will require that you have a home care provider that has a license and is licensed to provide those services. And a lot of times people will say to me, well, that's ridiculous because I can hire somebody off of care.com and I can pay them $35 an hour, but the agency is charging $50 an hour. That just seems unfair. What can I do? And so, depending on your policy and your policy language, you might be able to hire a person who is not licensed, but generally you have to. So, you got to have a licensed person. And in the event that you need care in a facility, a boarding care facility, you have to be careful because some policies do not pay for care in a boarding care facility if they have under like 10 residents, for example. Some of these contracts, really old contracts, are wonky. They require that the boarding care facility have more than 10 people or more than 6 people or something like that. So again, before you embark on any kind of, I think I'm going to file a claim, you have someone help you understand that language and you get a professional person to help you find a community so that your claim will be approved. Family members are not considered eligible for benefits. So that also is a thing that people somehow think is going to be paid. My granddaughter, my niece, my shirt tail relative. Every policy is different, but in general, there's a section in these policies that stipulates family members, and they go through the whole list, are not eligible, meaning, although it's important that they provide services for you, there is not a benefit that will be paid to you if that type of person provides your care. Where can care be received? So in general, your policies are probably comprehensive. And what comprehensive means is that your policies are designed to follow you along the care continuum, meaning you start in your home, you might go to an assisted living facility, and then you may go to a skilled nursing facility. Now let's just talk about those different areas really quick. Most of our claims are home care claims. That's where most people start using benefits, start needing care. But sometimes, and generally, when a person, in particular, a single person, so if you are a single individual and you don't have, like say that first line of defense, a family member or a spouse, that would be your caregiver, and you're needing more than 10 to 12 hours of supportive services a day, that's very, very expensive in your home. And sometimes that's why people end up moving into assisted living facilities, because they'll be able to be there. They can be receiving services, and they can have meals, et cetera, and the monthly fee is less expensive. So your policy will pay that. The policy will also pay in a skilled nursing facility. What is the likelihood that you're going to go into a skilled nursing facility? Not great. And that's a good thing. Used to be people would think, if I need long-term care, I don't want to go to those nursing homes. Well, people don't go to nursing homes anymore. Generally, these communities are rehab facilities where people will be after a surgical procedure or during an event, an acute flare up, and then they will go back home or they'll go back to their assisted living. In general, Medicare pays for that type of an event, and you won't be staying in a skilled nursing facility. My clients who have lived in skilled nursing facilities have been, I can maybe count them on 2 hands in the 37, 8 years I've been doing this. Because if you have private pay funds, you can receive services, very high level services in assisted living facilities or boarding care facilities or at home, certainly. These policies also will pay for physical therapy, occupational therapy. They will pay for durable medical equipment. They will pay for fall prevention. Now, the reason I'm mentioning PTOT is because typically Medicare will pay for physical therapy and occupational therapy, but we're finding more and more, Medicare has a limit to what they're going to pay. And I always tell our clients, especially those who have really serious balance issues, everybody needs PT. I call it personal training. You can call it physical therapy. I think kinesiotherapists and these types of individuals are absolutely critical. And regardless of whether or not your doctor recommends it or Medicare approves, that balance, that kinesio, that body, ability, it's very important to keep that up as you age, and long-term care insurance will pay for that. And you can have a private pay physical therapist. I have clients that do that, or a kinesiotherapist. The other thing is these policies will pay in dementia care or in an adult daycare facility. There aren't many of those, but there are some that are really good. In fact, it was noted in the introduction, I was a past board member of the George D. Glenner Alzheimer's Family Care Center. I need to change that bio because I've been off the board for a couple years, but I was a board member for 7 years. And adult day facilities are great for family members that are providing services for loved ones who have memory care, dementia, decline. Because sometimes they need a break. Okay, so that's where these policies will pay. That's how they're designed to pay. And keep in mind, these policies, maybe the people that designed them and thought about them didn't see it in this way, but they truly are supposed to be used to help people age in place safely. Unfortunately, most of the claims that we get are after the fact, after a fall, after a serious issue. And I tell people if we can just get to folks a little bit earlier, there can be an avoidance of falls and traumatic injuries. If you have been a caregiver or a family member, you know what I'm talking about. It changes. It's terrible to have falls and fractures because it really does change people's lives. We want to avoid that. Okay, so the next thing, advocacy in these policies are benefit triggers. And again, just like I was talking earlier about contract language, this is weird language. No other insurance policy is going to talk about bathing, dressing, toileting, or continence care. And I mean, we don't even talk about those types of things in our regular conversations with our family members and friends. It's personal. But in long-term care insurance, that's how these insurance companies determine whether or not you're going to get your money. So for example, there's 2 benefit triggers. There's 2 paths to go down. The first path to go down for you to be approved and to get your money is called a functional path. And that means that for whatever reason, health, age, infirmity, physical event, you need help with your activities of daily living. Activities of daily living would be bathing or showering, dressing, transferring, which is standing up, sitting down, moving, from a bed to a chair, toileting, which is getting to and from, sitting down, standing up, and hygiene, continence care, controlling your bowel and bladder and the hygiene associated with that, and eating, getting the food into the mouth. And I'm going to talk about that and transferring in just a sec. And sometimes ambulation is also in the contracts, which means that if you need to be assisted outside of your home to walk because of an instability, that's considered you're independent. You're not independent in ambulating. So here's what I would like to say. Because those terms are not in the vernacular for most people, when folks file claims, they'll say this: I'm not driving anymore. I need transferring help, because they think transferring is driving. And that's not what transferring in these contracts mean. Or I need to file a claim because I'm not preparing meals for myself anymore. And I need somebody to go to the grocery store and help me prepare meals. That's eating. And that is not what that means. So transferring has nothing to do with transportation, and eating has nothing to do with preparing meals. But you note those 2 things, transportation and eating, are usually the first things that start going south for people and why they need support. But with long-term care insurance, in order for you to be approved, you have to need help with two of those things I just listed. So for example, most of my clients don't want any help, somebody physically touching them, because it's a privacy issue. Thankfully, most of these policies say if you just need somebody to stand by at arm's length while you put your shoes and socks on, while you get in and out of the shower, you're considered eligible for benefits. And so I try and help people understand, and I ask them, tell me everything about how you get dressed during the day. Tell me it all. How do you get in and out of the shower? And here are some things that trigger in my mind when I tell people you probably need to think of filing a claim. I'll hear something like, I'll shower once a week, and I'll say, is that what you want? Not really, but I'm just so worried about falling. I just don't want to put myself in that position. That means that you should have somebody assist you with that so you can shower whenever you want or how you want. And then I hear also, I can dress myself totally. And I'll say, what kind of socks and shoes do you use? Oh, I wear slippers because it's too hard for me to bend over. Or I'm supposed to wear Ted hose, but I can't get them on because they're too hard to pull up. And so just having conversations with people and understanding what they're not doing that they would like to or they should be doing gives me an understanding of functionally where they're at. We talk a lot about people walking outside. And in my family, I've noticed, so when, my mom, for example, if she has a fall, her fear of falling again causes her to sit more if she doesn't feel like somebody's going to be available to make sure when she gets outside or whatnot. And so it sort of creates this cycle of non-mobility, which is never good. Moving, walking, getting around, and staying engaged in life is so critically important. And so we want to bring in supportive services for people functionally for their meal preparation, to get what they need from the grocery store, to get them to and from the doctors, to make sure they're getting in and out of the shower safely and everything's getting cleaned up, and to help them with their clothing, whatever clothing they want to wear. Make sure they put their clothes on. Sometimes people don't get dressed. They don't get out of their night jammies because they just are too tired or they don't want to deal with it. So that's one path. That's a lot of information, but that's one path. The other path is a cognitive path, meaning that if you have a diagnosed cognitive impairment, and I mean a real serious cognitive impairment, because mild cognitive impairment is fairly common. Moderate cognitive impairment is not as common. Severe cognitive impairment is somewhat uncommon to see documented. And so these insurance companies say, you have to have a severe cognitive impairment. Well, what does that mean? And so we help people understand what the insurance company is going to want to see in order to approve a claim. Here's the problem. A lot of times people don't get diagnosed because their primary care physician might not be as in tune to understand what's going on in the home. They don't know that things are hard in the home. They don't know that the bills aren't being paid, or that the medication is not being taken, or that things are really falling through the cracks. And so it's important that when we meet people and we talk to them about their life and we're talking with their family members, to understand how are they functioning from an executive level, from an administrative level in their household. Are they cooking meals still? Are they able to dial the phone? Are they able to understand what to do in the event of an emergency? Those types of things. And so we will meet with clients and determine which path are we going to go down to help them file a claim. And then what we do in advocacy for folks is we help them collect that proof of loss. So in order for any insurance company to give you any money, you have to prove it. And in insurance vernacular, that's called a proof of loss. Well, what is proof of loss? That means you've paid for something and you have a receipt, or that you have clinical documentation that's showing a loss of functional or cognitive capacity. And so my staff, we gather that information before we file a claim to make sure that we can prove what we're going to be telling the insurance company is true. Okay, so this is almost done. I know this is so much information, and please understand, if you are not anywhere near filing a claim, you don't even need to worry about this. All you need to do is make sure you understand you have a policy, you have your policy in your home, and a little bit about what you have. You're also welcome to just reach out to me and say, hey, I have this type of a policy. You can send it to me, and you and I can get on a Zoom call and I can explain to you what benefits you have. I don't charge for that. I can take about a 30-minute window and help people understand their policies better. And sometimes it's really good to get a family member on the phone too. Okay, so navigating long-term care insurance claims. It's very complicated. And why is it complicated? Is because of technology. Technology is fantastic, but also it's not fantastic. And the reason I say that is because more and more of our carriers are going to portals, which I know that you're all familiar with. I really hate portals. I mean, it's great when they work, but this whole password and second party authentication, it's critically important because of, fraud and theft and all those types of things. But it's just another layer of like, and so sometimes our clients choose not to communicate through portals, and that's okay with us. We will communicate for them. We will communicate through their portals for them. And we provide still PDFs, paper. We still provide that documentation to our clients because it's still a good way to communicate, actually seeing something and touching something. So with long-term care insurance, communication is at the top of the list, and that you have to communicate with your insurance company or things are not going to go well. They will be sending all kinds of letters to you about what they need, and you have to be able to respond to that. I want to just answer a really quick question about if someone is terminally ill. If you have a long-term care insurance policy and you have a deductible, I'm just going to give a quick example. Let's pretend you have a 90-day deductible. If there is a hospice situation and a person needs to go into a facility, a lot of times these companies will waive the deductible. A terminal illness does not mean you shouldn't file because maybe the person won't be living as long. I tell people the terminal name or the terminal word isn't really the issue. The issue is, what does the person need done for them? So I have a family member who has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's a terminal diagnosis, but happily and surprisingly, he's actually doing really well. He has a terminal diagnosis, but he's able to take care of himself at this time. And so my question to you would be, how is the person functioning? Does the person need somebody to help them? Are they weak? If they're weak, how are they getting in and out of the shower? How are they getting dressed? And if those things are being done by a spouse or a family member and they have long-term care insurance, they need to file a claim because yes, that person would be eligible. The other thing is when a person files a claim, I'm going to give you an example of one I just had recently. This sweet lady moved into Frederica Manor down in Chula Vista. And Chula Vista or Frederica Manor is an assisted living facility, but it's also an independent living facility. So sometimes people live in independent, sometimes they move to the assisted living side. And she filed a claim because she has a policy. She got on the phone and she said, I'm living here. And they said, okay, go ahead and file a claim. And so they called me and I said, what are you getting? What types of services? And she said, well, I'm not getting any services. I'm just living here paying rent. And I said, oh, actually, you're not going to get any money because you have to be getting care. And her question was, well, what kind of care should I be getting? I said, what did you tell the insurance company? And she said, well, I told them I'm not getting anything, but I'm living here. And so I told her that communication to the insurance company is going to probably cause them to deny your claim, but we can start over again. But first things first, you need to, when you communicate to the insurance company, going into that phone conversation, you need to understand, what are they looking for? What do they want to know? You cannot assume that when you get on the phone to the insurance company that they're waiting for your call, because they're not. They have a script that they're following, and you have to fit into their language. And so before you pick the phone up to file a claim, you need to know, what kind of information are they going to be asking me that's going to cause this to go to the next step? The next step is the nursing assessment. So let's pretend your communication, you file a claim, you get through that first little hurdle. They're going to send a nurse out to interview you. And we have a nurse that attends these assessments for our clients. And so they go well. But when people do not have a representative with them, these nursing assessments sometimes can go like down the tubes. I'll just give you an example. I had a client whose their claim was denied, and they came to us. The reason it was denied is because this sweet lady has advanced dementia, but she's amazing. She gardens, she's in unbelievably great shape. She's so communicative, and she's just beautiful. And so the husband assumed that he didn't need to be part of the assessment. So when the nurse came, the nurse asked my client, do you drive? And my client, I drive all over the place. Do you cook? I cook every night. And none of that was true. But she was just so beautifully communicative that the nurse believed it. And there was no one there to say, actually, that's not what's happening. No, she hasn't driven for 4 years. The claim was denied. And so we were able to get the claim started again. And the next time the nurse came, we had the power of attorney, which is the husband, and the same thing started again. And the nurse asked her questions, and the power of attorney answered the questions for her. And in addition, we provided proof from the doctor, and the claim was approved. But again, I mean, who would know that it would be important to represent someone in such an obvious situation? But the insurance company is not understanding an obvious situation. The insurance company is looking for proof. The other thing is, once claims are approved, they're not rubber stamped, and they'll never call you again. And this is what's different about this type of insurance. So for example, let's say you have an accident in your car, which is terrible, but the car gets fixed and hopefully you're fine, and you go on your way and you get a new car, you get your car fixed. These claims are monthly, every single month or every single week or every single whatever kind of care you're getting, that has to continually be sent to the insurance company. Once a person files a claim with long-term care insurance, it generally is for months and months and months. And so because people are not used to communicating, or they're not skilled at sending documents to an insurance company, they're going to trust the provider and the insurance company are going to talk to each other and get what is needed so that money can go into their bank account. And that's where the process breaks down sometimes. So that's navigating these claims. In general, like I said earlier, if you know what they're looking for, you have your proof, you can communicate, or someone can communicate well for you, and that information and that proof of loss gets to the insurance company, you'll be fine. And you're probably thinking, oh, that doesn't sound fine. That sounds terrible. So if you have a long-term care insurance policy, what I tell people is just slow down, slow, no, show, slow. You're going to call the insurance company. Like I said before, make sure you have somebody with you. Make sure that you understand what they're looking for and that somebody is communicating for you, or you're communicating for you. And again, why am I saying that? Because if you ask a typical person that might be in their late 80s or early 90s, if they have any problems, they're going to tell you all of their health conditions, but they're not going to tell you anything about their functional functionality in their home, like walking around or showering or dressing. They won't talk about that. So a long-term care claim has to be focused on how you do things, not so much what's wrong with you. Like, how do you live? How are you taking care of yourself? Are you a safety risk? No. So slow down. No. What do you have? Understand what you have. Understand what the insurance company is going to be asking for so that you're not caught off guard by that. And we tell people, um, once we see their policy, here's what they want from you. Are we going to be able to get that? And then show the insurance company, the adjuster, the nurse, what's wrong with you. Before our clients have their nursing assessment, we always talk to them about, and I'll ask them, if the nurse asks you, how are you able to do X, Y, and Z? What would you say? And a lot of times, because they've had supportive services in their home, they're able to answer those questions. But those are hard things to talk about for people. And there's can be some denial with regard to personal functional things that are embarrassing to talk about. But in this case, I tell people, lay it all out. Just put it all out on the table. You can be, a little embarrassed about it. That's okay. But what we're after is your benefits. So one of the questions I want to answer is there a waiting period if someone is terminal? I think I may have answered that question. I believe, did I answer that question? Please message me back if you have more questions about the terminal illness issue. Okay, so 10 more minutes, and I want to take some questions, and I don't know, Vanya, if you can unmute people. I'm not sure how you want to do that, but again, what our role is, we will help people understand what they have for their long-term care insurance with regard to their benefits, if they get rate increases. A lot of times people don't have a broker anymore because a lot of these policies may have been sold in groups. And there just isn't a representative to talk to, so you got to call an insurance company. We can answer questions for you pretty simply. Again, the easiest way to communicate with me is via email. And so, Vanya, I would be more than happy to answer some questions.